The southwest monsoon is now in retreat, but it leaves wreckage behind in several states, showering the country's fields with the heaviest rainfall in nearly 25 years. The burst occurred after June when everyone was expecting deficit rainfall, calling upon the agriculture sector to brace for a subpar output. The resulting impact is visible. The prices of the existing produce in the market, onion prices for instance, have surged 200%, pushing retail inflation to the highest since July 2018. Help us understand the dynamics of this and the impact of this year's erratic rainfall on the crop pattern. Let's welcome in former member of the erstwhile Planning Commission, Abhijit Sen. Mr. Sen, thanks so much for taking the time out. You would have seen countless such instances wherein monsoon has been erratic, just that for a lot of people who are seeing this not such a long time back, you have seen a deficit rainfall at the start only to see it compound and get exaggerated in the ensuing period. How do you foresee the impact of all of this on crop prices and the economy?
On prices, well, the rainfall has been very erratic. It was a horrible June, and it's been a very copious September and October. The effect on output still for Kharif is a bit uncertain. For Rabi, this should be very good because reservoir levels are extremely good. As far as prices go, that should follow output. So from Rabi onwards, prices should be good come down in Rabi. About Kharif prices, I'm not entirely sure. It'll depend on the crop. There are certain crops which have been hit badly because of the low rainfall earlier in the monsoon season. Others might recover because of the high rainfall, but I think on the whole, I think the situation on the output side is very uncertain for Kharif, and therefore but generally, in the price situation, the big issue is not related to the monsoon, it's related to the markets.
Mm-hmm. And would you elaborate on that, sir? Based on what you're seeing right now, are we entering a worrying period, or do you reckon that steps are possible to be taken with regards to the market situation in order to normalize whatever issues there might be?
No, see, the point is that we are going through a peculiar phase where on the one hand, farmers complain, and rightly so, that the price that they get is just simply not enough. So generally, there is a complaint across the country on low farm prices that the farmers are getting. And this affects output that they produce, their consumption, their demand for industrial goods, everything. On the other hand, in certain goods, notably very strongly in the case of onion, you got the government suddenly very, very concerned about urban onion prices and went on an export ban, which is actually reacting almost knee-jerk fashion to a rise in prices which can have urban inflation. And underneath this all, there is a fact, and it's an important fact which I've not noticed for a very long time, which is if you look at the rural CPI food and compare it with the urban CPI food, for the last 8 months or so, urban CPI food has been inflation has been increasing. The rural CPI food is either flat or maybe slightly coming down. Now, this might simply reflect the fact that rural incomes are doing worse than urban incomes. But whatever it is asking the question, what's happening to our markets? Why aren't they integrated more? Why aren't urban prices flowing down to the rural areas? Or why are urban prices not signaling a supply from the low-priced rural supplies to the more high-priced urban supplies? And it shows that something's wrong with the market. And my guess is it's got something to do with the fact that the cash economy is struggling. And I mean the cash economy.
Right. Mr. Sen, so what does it do for the future output? And do you feel, irrespective of what core inflation does, and even if in the year you do see core inflation coming off, food inflation could continue to remain high, which then again should improve terms of trade for farmers?
See, as I said, I mean, the point is that inflation is not the cause for worry for the economy in general, and even for the food economy at the moment. In fact, somewhat higher prices for food would be good for farmers. It's not as if, except for one or two, I mean, suddenly some vegetables somewhere prices shoot up, but that's common if you have got horrible rainfall, if transports are cut off. So that part I can understand. But what I cannot understand, and I think this should actually make a lot of people think, is something is going wrong between the way rural prices are behaving and the way urban prices are behaving. It has to do with market integration. And this little puzzle is not so little if you think in terms of the bigger all-India problem of the economy, which is consumer demand. Because if it continues like this, you will, on the one hand, have nothing propelling rural demand, which depends upon what farmers get. And on the other hand, if you are too bothered about inflation, which hopefully people will not be, you'll be trying to actually cut down whatever stimulus, fiscal or monetary, that you might be otherwise thinking.
Mr. Sen, aside from that, we've been talking a whole lot about how rural inflation is also a function of how much the farmer actually gets in his hand. And to that extent, a slightly higher rural inflation may mean that there is more money going into the hands of the farmer, which again, in a way, transitions to spending power in the rural economy. So does that blend well, according to you?
Well, that's obviously happening. Whether it blends well or not, I don't know what it's supposed to blend well with, but that's what's happening. And I think it is something which one should, I think what has happened to some extent, quite apart from dislocations caused by very uneven rainfall, which has happened in many places, those really cause supply chains to break down, and it causes assumptions which farmers or traders might have made also to break down. So these are uncertainties which come and go, and they get exaggerated when you've got such weird rainfall situation as we've seen this year. But that apart, I think what we are also seeing is the effect of that trying to move towards a cashless economy is having on the rural market and on the food market in particular.
Mr. Sen,
and I think that's something which nobody is really talking about, which is why I want to actually push that one.
No, sure. So let's, the final question on this is, I just guess that the extent in terms of the time taken for this impact to wear off is anybody's guess, because we've now started or tried to move towards this cashless economy for a while. People anticipated the impact will be short-lived, and it's not short-lived, it's still continuing, and it's very difficult, I believe, to assess when it will stop impacting.
Yeah, I don't know. I seriously think that there is something out there which some people are ignoring, but even those like me who are not ignoring it are a bit uncertain about what exactly it is. We've got some idea, but I think we have not had the sort of discussion on this matter, which in an economy like India's is a big issue. And at the back of all this, mind you, the FCI is sitting with huge stocks. And so if the government has to actually come in say in the Rabi season to do higher procurement to keep farm prices up, it'll find that its stocking space with the FCI is virtually nil. So, I mean, there are clouds in the wind which makes me think that this is not something which will just go away. It will just, tide over.
How prolonged a problem is this in your opinion, Mr. Sen?
Which one? How long will it go on?
Yes.
I couldn't get your question.
With regards to the overall, issues that we just highlighted, because of these erratic rainfalls and the cashless economy and the differential between the rural and the urban pricing, how long do you think that that disparity will continue to weigh in?
I think it's going to continue. I think it's going to continue unless we can get a sense on the pulse of what is it that the market is being unable to do. And I think is it simply a question of infrastructure? Is it simply a question of market reforms? Is it a question of something to do with what we have ended up doing with, on the one hand, a cash economy, on the other, a certain feeling amongst a lot of traders that trade is more risky today for both, for reasons of both the way the weather is behaving as well as how the government is behaving.